So you've got your basic sculpture started, you've added your attachments, and you've wrapped it. And now you're coming back and you want to refine the details. Now, you don't want to start working on refining your details until after you've cut your hole and you've added your cork hole at the bottom. The reason why is because you want to make sure that you're not accidentally squashing any pieces as you move this around. So usually the first thing I do whenever I get my clay open is I go through and I just check for any cracks and I smooth those out. So I've created my kind of basic figure here, but it's kind of plain. And what we're going to do now is refine it. Now there's a couple ways you can refine. You want to make sure first that any smooth areas are completely smooth, and your fingers work well for this. And any hard to reach areas you can use the popsicle stick or other details. So before I start adding textures or anything, I just go around and I kind of spend some time smoothing this out as best I can. Checking any seams where I've added clay, smoothing things, kind of refining the general structure. If you have big gaps, you can take some plastic clay. If your clay is leather hard, you can wet that with your finger and slip and score it. This is still pretty plastic, so I can just kind of add right to it and smooth it out, just as if I was sculpting it. So you just want to have your general form. We're thinking kind of in basic shapes. You're smoothing it out. You're trying to refine your project to a point where it's presentable. So once you're done with that, you want to start adding textures and details. With clay, basically, there's a couple ways that you can think about adding textures and details. You can remove the clay, add sculptural clay, or indent the clay. And we have a couple tools I've provided for that. Popsicle stick, toothpick, and a paper clip. Now, basically what you want to do is anytime you're working with tools, you want to make sure you dip them in some water to add lubrication to them. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to think about shaping these feet. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to use this tool, and I can go in and I can legitimately just kind of squeeze that popsicle stick down onto the sides and get nice crisp edges. If I want to go in and add toes, I can kind of indent the clay and use this tool. And you can experiment. Changing it at different angles will allow you to add different features. So there I'm kind of adding toenail beds to it just by pressing it down. If you want to sculpt or carve in things like scales, again, I'm just going in, I'm dipping my toothpick in the water, and I'm carving some scales in the foot. Now, if you end up with kind of what I call clay boogers, which are these kind of pieces of clay that get rough near the edges, what you can do is you can come in with a brush once you're done and just kind of brush over those areas, or even dip your brush in some water and smooth that out. Using water with your tools will help. So I can kind of sculpt in and carve details. If I wanted to, I could go in here, I could carve some eyeballs. Could even remove some of those. And again, any clay that I want to get out of there, a moistened paintbrush can help you kind of smooth that out. You may have to go in and resculpt. And you can see now while we save refining for the end. So I can go in. I can also add bits of clay. So it's not a bad idea to keep some plastic clay off to the side. Maybe I want to add a puffy eyebrow. Always add some slip to both sides. Scratch and attach. Adding that eyebrow on. I can come in and smooth that out with my tools. Try to remove any cracks. Always starting with a general shape. Don't try to get it perfect the first time. It's more important to get it attached. And then you can come back in with tools. Let's say I wanted to add some hair to that. So I've sculpted it, I've smoothed it out, I've attached. maybe I'll go through and I can just use the toothpick to add texture. So now I kind of have a ridge line on there, as you can see. Now, one thing I really want to challenge you to do is it's easy to put textures near maybe a face or on a wing or an arm, but this is a three-dimensional sculpture. There's sides to it, front, back, top, bottom. You really want to try to add textures to all details. What you don't want to do is just go in and do some quick hatching and scratching. If you do, you might just want to smooth it out. That's not the most advanced texture. I want you to think about how you can use these different tools. If you want to make a fur texture, again, dipping it in the water, and then you can kind of layer these. Check this out. You can kind of go in and press down a bunch of times, and you can start to create a fur texture. If you want to get a little bit more advanced, you can come into them and maybe lay your toothpick down. You can also carve stuff away by using a paper clip. This little U shape of the paper clip is really great for carving out sections if you want some rough texture. Really great way to go through it. Just takes a little bit of time to refine, but you can get all these really cool textures that make people want to go around your piggy bank and experiment. So you can just kind of see I've already shaped up the foot. When you're done, you just want to go through, check your edges, make sure everything's attached. I'm looking for cracks. I'm trying to smooth it out. And then the most important part is you want to sign your name, or at least put your initials on the bottom. There's a good example of those clay boogers. We kind of have a rough edge. So you come in either with a dry brush if it's dry, or a wet brush, and smooth some of those out. So as you finish getting kind of your main details, I want you to go through, I want you to practice adding features to your sculpture. If you want to test it out, just take a piece of clay, flatten it with your palm, and it's always good to have a piece to test on before you go to your final sculpture. You can play with some textures there and smooth it out. So before finishing your sculpture, make sure you add textures around the entire surface so people want to move your bank around, look at it, check out the different details.